back against sustainable development. But here's some good news. You know, I've been working against sustainable development for 18 years since the 1992 Earth Summit, and it's been a very, very lonely battle. Let me tell you, there have been 4 or 5 of us that really kind of leading the battle on this thing, and we felt pretty helpless and pretty hopeless in it all. In the last year, and particularly in the last 6 months, this has exploded. There are people across this country who are now waking up to this, who are fighting it. I said in a speech about 4 years ago that if we could get 10 counties across the country to reject this, we would start a revolution. Well, this year, in January, Carroll County, Maryland, for the very first time, 5 county commissioners rejected sustainable development. They shut down the Sustainable Development Office. They refused to approve the development plan, and they kicked ICLEI out of their community. That was followed by Amador County in California, was followed by Edmond, Oklahoma, and Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. They have all kicked ICLEI out of their communities, and they are all turning back. I have talked to numerous counties since then, people vying to become number 5. And the revolution is on. The Tea Party movement has picked this issue up. It is now being listed as their number 1 issue to fight. And I just could not be more thrilled at this. So how do we fight back? You've got to become aware. The first thing you have to do is research your own community and find 2 things. Find the programs that they're putting in place, and the second, and you've got to research. You got to know what you're talking about, the whole agenda, so you know how to look for it. So look at our website and find this material, but then find out who the players are in your community, the organizations. Is ICLEI in your community? Is the American Planning Association involved? Is there's a group called the Renaissance Planning Organization. There, all these kind of things. Who's playing? Who are involved? What kind of environmental groups and so forth? Know that before you ever step into a city council or a county commission office, because if you go in there and start wailing your arms around and say you're implementing the United Nations policies, they're going to laugh you out of the room.
You've got to be informed. And Steve, let me say this: we'll be having more programs like this to inform our listeners, giving them information on where to go and what to do and what to look for. Tom, most of them don't know what to look for.
Sure.
When they go and look into the, their communities and see what is being built, so forth.
And nothing's written, so it's easy for us to find it. It's all written in this little, warm and fuzzy language that sounds wonderful in a lot of ways.
I read earlier in the program, their definition of a sustainable community. They make it sound good. Let me ask this question. Thank you for calling, Steve. Before we go to Leslie in Virginia, here is a question that one of our listeners is asking. It said, could the current crisis in home ownership and foreclosures with people losing their homes be part of this push to push us into this community type living that you're speaking of? We almost lost our home because of a so-called loan modification, but thanks to God we were able to recover. So what do you think about that?
That's a very good question, and I put nothing past them. I haven't looked at it from that exact position on it, but that is a very good perspective on it, and it certainly falls into their hands. There's no question about that. And again, but this again goes back to this this Mussolini-style fascism of these public-private partnerships. You've got private companies, in this case, it would be private banks, that are in partnership with the government. Certainly the government passed regulations, particularly under Bill Clinton, that said banks had to give loans to people who didn't qualify for them. That, again, goes along with the social equity aspect of sustainable development. So there are definitely ties there. And, it just helps one more thing. Yeah.
Okay, one more quick question, Tom. What is being planned for the small farms and the big corporate farms as far as raising our own food and being a long way out of the cities?
Well, again, the small farmer is targeted. Any open area, they're now, the state of Virginia has now listed I just learned this yesterday, instead of a small farm, they're calling it open space. That is an alarm bell going off, because open space has to do with a major aspect of the Sustainable Development Agenda, which is the Wildlands Project, which is literally designed to herd people off the rural lands into the cities, making it difficult for them to live. Small farmers are a target. They are using things like conservation easements to get farmers trying to preserve his farm, and he's being overtaxed. The massive farm corporations are making it very difficult for them to compete in the market, and they're signing these conservation easements, which means they've literally rendered their land useless or worthless.
This must be part of. But I think it was one of our states. We discussed this 2 or 3 years ago. They actually went on to, it was like, how some of these Mennonite communities and local farmers, like what she said, they raise their own produce and then they sell it. Yeah. People from the community come by and stop and buy eggs or milk or vegetables, from the local farmer. Yeah. And they went into this one farm and they actually burst into like a SWAT team and burst into their home with guns and held them, at bay with the guns for several hours, looking into their production of food, the selling of it, so forth and so on. Of course, the family was terrified.
Sure.
Had no idea of what was going on. But now we're seeing government say that, these foods that these farmers have been selling for years might not meet specifications. So they're making a law that they can't sell food.
Yeah, this is a really interesting situation. There's a real schizophrenia going on here, even with the sustainabilists, which shows you that it has nothing to do with protecting the environment. Because if you listen to people who advocate sustainability, they will talk about having the small farmer and the organic food and that type of growth, all natural, that sort of thing. That's what they encourage. And yet, they are behind these very efforts you're talking about to control food process. Another process or another situation I heard of was people who had natural milk right out of the cows, didn't go through the homogenizing effort, and the government came in and were stopping cars from coming from there and pouring their milk on the ground. And of course, we just passed this new regulation that puts every farm under government regulation on these very things we're talking about, which the small farmer can't exist. Well, who was behind that? Who was behind it were these massive corporate farms who want to put the small farmer out of business. So there's a schizophrenia of this organic and natural and so forth, and now you've got these massive corporate farms who are calling their stuff natural and organic, which it's not. So right. It's just they don't go. Not everything is smooth for these guys.
Right. Okay, Leslie, we're going to be with you just a moment. It says, I am a Canadian-born man, and I moved to America in 1992. I came here to find work and to worship without fear. I lived in northern Quebec, Canada, and in the late 1980s in a mining town. While I was there, they had the type of housing that you're discussing on the program today. It was a huge building with everything that you needed there to live. And on the bottom floor were shops and grocery stores, anything that you needed to live. There was an Olympic-sized swimming pool and Olympic-sized ice hockey arena. On the second to the fifth floor, there were apartments. Each one was the same. All 1 or 2 bedrooms, probably to limit the children because there was not room. Now, if you didn't work in the facility, you worked for the mining company and they took you to work by bus. It had everything you needed. If you wanted to, you could live for years there without going outside. You didn't need a car or anything for that matter. Rent and all other things were deducted from your paycheck automatically. I thought this might help people to know that this has been in North America for over 30 years. And this is exactly what we're talking about, Tom.
Yeah. Where are these people's individuality? Where are their hopes, their dreams, where's their opportunity to move forward? other than to just be in this well-organized community.
And they're being told what to do, where to work, and so forth and so on, and the government will be handling their paycheck. People need to wake up and realize this. Let's go to Leslie in Virginia watching on Dish. Leslie, welcome to Sun Life Broadcasting, and you have a question?
Yes, I do. I want to thank you, you and Tom, number one, for being the watchman. And Tom, this is a byproduct, your sustainable development. As we speak, George Soros is meeting at Bretton Woods, and that is to get rid of our currency, as you know, this weekend. And he is pushing for that. And as you know, UN is going for taxing authority. And the way we need to deal with this is to get disclosure of these elected officials. And if you could get a copy, I haven't seen one for about 6 or 7 years, you will see, I will speak for the state of Virginia, you can take a Mack truck to it. You don't know anything about their partnerships who are involved, because in 1986 they had that changed and no longer did you follow with the circuit court. And this is federal, by the way, the limited partnerships, who these people are in partners with, and we need to get that restored. We need to get a disclosure, and the governor treating you the way he did, that is because we have two globalists in Virginia as we speak, being George Allen and being Kane, who has now made his announcement to run for Senate. Both of them are for NAFTA and GATT. Both of them are for the Patriot Bill. I call it the treason bill. Here we go. What they did, they ignored you in a nice Southern gentleman fashion. We have lost massive jobs in Southwest Virginia. Our manufacturing base and our coal industry needs you, Tom, and we need people to stand up and expose these people. We need to expose them through the financial disclosure. So they need to file a financial disclosure, such as a federal worker, state worker, that works for Virginia, I'm giving you an example, or a judge. The same thing we have with the judgeships. It's the lack of disclosure. And if we get this done, a lot of these problems will be resolved very quickly. Why? Because they will not get elected. Why? Because of conflict of interest. It is the banks running the show and the corporations, as you know. We must go to the heart of the matter, because we will continue to be a byproduct or after the fact. We've got to get the head of the 8 ball.
It is like anything else you discuss when you're trying to find the root of the bad things. Follow the money. And that is the root of it all, and there's no question about that. And I know full well that they were politely helping us out the door yesterday, and that not another thing will be done. The one thing that we demanded of the representative of the governor's office was this law that was passed in 2007 that made it mandatory that these communities do these comprehensive development plans, which is really the weapon that is being used to put this in every community. And here's the guy who was the #1 economic advisor on all this to the governor, who did not know that this bill made it mandatory to do that. He said, gee, I thought it was just voluntary, isn't it? No, it's mandatory. That's why there's all this consternation that's created now. And so he promised that he would look into that. That was the one piece of leverage that we had, that we came away with, that we intend to continue to pound on, to get this mandatory provision out of this bill, out of this law, and that will stop some of the spread of some of this disease.
Okay, Leslie, is Leslie gone? Okay, she must be. All right, thank you for calling. Let me ask this question. Is the reverse mortgage offered to the older generation a part of this plan, Tom?
I think that is a horrendous plan, and yes, I think it is a way to get property, just like conservation easements are. I think that's the plan to sucker, just elderly homeowners into
right.
that,
okay.
Because they get their money up front and they can live their life. One of the major tenets of private property is that you can build wealth from it, and by wealth, I mean that doesn't have to mean that you are Donald Trump. That means that you have created something of value. And one of the major things that people do with their wealth